She swung before anyone could stop her. That's what the neighbors said later, but I saw it. Carla Benwick, president of the Silver Ridge Estates HOA, standing in the middle of the cul-de-sac, with her clipboard raised like a weapon. Lydia was holding a bag of mulch, still smiling from helping the neighborhood kids plant flowers, when Carla's fist connected with her face. A hollow crack echoed off the driveways, followed by the sound of the clipboard clattering to the pavement. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then I did. Carla's voice broke the silence. "She laid hands on community property," she snapped, trembling with the righteousness only petty power gives. I was correcting her behavior. My hand was already on my phone. "You just committed aggravated battery," I said evenly, "and you did it in front of 3 witnesses and 2 security cameras." That got her attention. Her smug grin faltered, eyes flicking toward the HOA office camera mounted on the lamppost. It was still recording. She hadn't realized it was my installation, authorized during my brief volunteer stint on the safety committee. I'd wired every feed into a cloud backup she didn't control. If you've ever watched someone drunk on power realize they've lost control, you know the look: shock, panic, and then denial. She stepped back, muttering, "You people don't know the bylaws. This is private jurisdiction." "Not when there's blood on the asphalt," I cut in. Before I go further, if you've ever seen someone hurt your family and try to hide behind a rule book, hit subscribe right now. Because what happened next isn't about revenge. It's about accountability, and it moves fast. I'm Ethan Merrow, retired Navy SEAL, now teaching maritime security in Fort Pierce. I've seen worse violence than a neighbor's punch, but never one that made my hands shake this hard. Combat taught me to act, not react. But this, seeing Lydia stumble, her lips split, confusion in her eyes, this was something else. The woman who hit her wasn't an enemy soldier. She was an HOA president, swinging in the name of community standards. And I could already see how she'd spin it: self-defense, property protection, misunderstanding. I'd seen bureaucrats hide behind paperwork before. I'd also learned how to take them apart using their own rules. Lydia's the reason we moved here. She wanted peace after years of night shifts in emergency rooms where she watched lives break in silence. The flagstone pier behind our house, built by my late teammate's father, became our ritual spot. Every evening, we'd watch the light scatter over the lake and talk about nothing. That pier meant healing. When I installed the flagpole beside it, it wasn't decoration. It was memory. A folded flag from a funeral I couldn't stop replaying in my head. Carla called it visual clutter. She fined us $500 and ordered it removed for aesthetic harmony. Lydia tried to reason with her, quoting state law that protected our right to fly it. Carla smirked and said, "Laws change when I enforce them." That was last week. Today she made it physical. I knelt beside Lydia. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Her fingers clutched mine, steady but trembling. I kept my voice calm. "Stay seated, love. Don't move your neck. Paramedics are coming." Carla hovered nearby, clutching her clipboard like it could shield her from what she'd done. "I have authority here," she muttered, her tone brittle now. I looked at her, just once. Not anymore. 2 neighbors, Tom from across the street and a woman named Melissa, were already on their phones. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. A breeze moved through the jacaranda trees, scattering purple petals across the blood on the pavement. For the first time since I left the military, my pulse felt like it did before a mission. Steady, deliberate, deadly quiet. When the police arrived, I didn't argue, didn't shout. I gave my statement like a deposition. Facts only, camera angles, witnesses, date stamps. Carla tried to justify herself, but even the officer flinched at the arrogance in her tone. They took her into custody for questioning. Lydia was loaded into the ambulance, and I followed close behind, the siren washing the neighborhood in blue and red. Every porch light flicked on as we passed. People watched from their windows, realizing what had just happened in their perfect HOA-managed world. As the ambulance doors closed, I looked back at the cul-de-sac, the clipboard lying abandoned beside the broken mulch bag, the tiny pool of blood reflecting streetlights. The war I thought I'd left behind had just found me again. Only this time, the battlefield was my own driveway, and the enemy wasn't foreign. She lived 3 houses down, but I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger's easy. Precision wins wars. And before this was over, Carla Benwick was going to learn that starting a fight with a Navy SEAL wasn't a power move. It was financial suicide waiting to happen. The siren cut off outside Silver Ridge Hospital, and I climbed out after Lydia, still half numb from the shock. The paramedics wheeled her through the sliding doors, the smell of antiseptic hitting me like ocean salt. I'd seen blood before, but it's different when it's hers. The nurse recognized us from community events and hurried her straight to a treatment bay. They cleaned the split lip, iced the swelling on her cheek, and took photos for the report. Lydia barely spoke, just kept repeating, "She hit me," like she was trying to convince herself it had really happened. The responding officer, Velasquez, badge 427, joined us 15 minutes later. Her expression was neutral, but careful. "We have enough for battery charges," she said. "Your wife's statement and the video you provided line up. Ms. Benwick's claiming you provoked her." I almost, laughed. Lydia wouldn't provoke anyone if you lit a fire under her. Velasquez must have seen my look because she added, "Don't worry, the footage speaks for itself. We'll forward it to the county prosecutor." That was the first time I realized Carla wasn't just cruel, she was calculating. She'd already started spinning her defense before Lydia's blood had even dried. Power addicts don't panic, they pre-script their excuses. 2 hours later, we were home. The street was empty except for the dark stains still visible where Lydia fell. The HOA security lights hummed above like silent witnesses. I carried her inside, settled her on the couch, and she tried to smile. "It's just a bruise," she whispered. "I'll be fine." But her eyes said otherwise. She'd spent her life stitching up strangers. Now she was the one bleeding. By morning, Carla's machinery had already started. My phone buzzed with an HOA-wide email titled, "Clarification regarding yesterday's unfortunate incident." It read like a corporate press release, dense, self-justifying, hollow. She called it a personal misunderstanding and assured residents that Silver Ridge Estates remains a safe and harmonious community. The kicker came at the end. Certain individuals have chosen to escalate minor disputes through external authorities rather than community dialogue. She meant us. I felt my jaw lock. That wasn't just spin, that was strategic deflection. She was painting Lydia as the aggressor, preempting sympathy before it spread. In public relations, that's how you kill accountability before it's born. And Carla had done this before. The tone was too polished, too rehearsed. So I did what I was trained to do: assess, adapt, act. I started by pulling the HOA charter and checking who the official communications officer was. Carla had signed the email herself. That meant she was acting in her official capacity when she wrote it. If she'd been defending herself as a private citizen, that would be different. But using HOA letterhead to distort an assault investigation, that blurred the line between personal action and organizational liability. It wasn't proof yet, but it was the first thread. Lydia rested in bed upstairs, soft breathing through the cracked door. I sat in my office surrounded by old service files and opened my laptop. Years in naval security had taught me to trace authority structures like enemy logistics lines. I started mapping out the HOA's command chain: president, vice president, treasurer, compliance chair, maintenance lead. The name Owen Lasker stood out. Maintenance supervisor, former firefighter. I'd spoken to him once when the lake lights shorted out last winter. Decent man, straightforward, probably hated this drama. The neighborhood app pinged. Residents were already talking. Someone posted a vague status about tensions at the cleanup and unnecessary police presence. Within minutes, the thread filled with speculation and side-taking. Some defended Carla. Others hinted they'd seen more than the HOA admitted. One comment hit me hardest. "If this is what community harmony looks like, maybe we need new leadership." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just our fight anymore. Late afternoon, I walked the property line near the lake. The sun caught the flag on the pier, its fabric fluttering weakly in the breeze. I'd installed that flagpole by the book. Height, distance, even the concrete base met state code. But Carla hadn't fined me because of dimensions. She'd done it because of what it represented. Control isn't about order, it's about humiliation. I took photos of the pier, the flagpole, and the citation letter she'd taped to our door last week. Then I logged everything: timestamps, email headers, her exact phrasing in the HOA memo. Every careless word she wrote under the HOA name made her, and the board, financially accountable. The next morning, I emailed Officer Velasquez to confirm Carla's arrest status. Release pending charges, she replied. Lawyered up already. Of course she had. That's what people like her do. They weaponize procedure. But procedure works both ways, and this time, it was going to bury her. I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and stared at the flag through the window. It hung steady in the windless air, a quiet reminder that control doesn't mean silence. Carla Benwick wanted a battle of rules. She was about to learn what happens when someone who wrote the rulebook decides to fight back. The morning after the email storm, Silver Ridge felt hollow, like the air itself had turned cautious. Lawns were still trimmed, hedges still perfect. But nobody waved anymore. The HOA board had called an emergency maintenance audit, which everyone knew was code for damage control. I waited until the crowd dispersed before heading toward the maintenance shed near the community pool. I wasn't going there to argue. I was going to find the only man who might still have a conscience left inside that system. Owen Lasker stood by the tool rack, clipboard in one hand, a mug of coffee in the other. He looked like he hadn't slept. His shoulders were tight, eyes fixed on a loose screw in the bench vise like the universe depended on it. When he saw me, he flinched, just enough to register guilt. "Hey, Ethan," he muttered, voice low. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I figured you'd be here early," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "You usually are." He hesitated, scratched at the back of his neck. The man was built like a firefighter, broad, steady, but his hands were shaking. His eyes flicked toward the security camera above the door, then to the floor. I followed his gaze. There was a red light on the camera, recording. I turned my body slightly, blocking the lens from catching his face. "Don't worry," I murmured. "It's just us talking." Owen's breath caught like he wasn't sure whether to believe me. "I'm not supposed to talk about any of it," he said finally. "Carla sent out a directive last night. Said anyone giving statements to law enforcement without her approval could face termination for breach of confidentiality." "That's not confidentiality," I said. "That's obstruction." He winced. The word hit him harder than I expected. "You don't get it," he whispered. "I've got a mortgage, a kid in community college, medical bills. Carla's awful, yeah, but if she fires me, I'm done." He wasn't lying. His uniform shirt was wrinkled, name patch half hanging by a loose thread. He looked like a man who'd spent years cleaning up after other people's messes only to be blamed for the spills. I recognized the posture, the kind soldiers get when orders and morals start to split apart. "I know what it's like to have someone hold your paycheck like a leash," I said. "But you're not protecting a job anymore, Owen. You're protecting her." He ran a hand over his face, then leaned against the workbench. I didn't think she'd go that far. The flag thing, the citations. I told her it was bad optics. Then she hit your wife, and I... His voice cracked slightly, and he dropped it to a whisper. "The cameras caught it, Ethan. All of it. Multiple angles." That stopped me cold. "You have access?" He nodded, glancing toward the small metal cabinet under the counter. "The HOA server backs up to that drive before syncing to the board cloud. She doesn't even know it's manual. Old system left over from the last company." His eyes darted toward the door again, like he expected Carla to materialize. "She told me to erase the whole segment before Monday, said she'd handle the narrative herself." "And you?" I asked. He looked at his hands again. The fingers twitched around the coffee mug, tightening until the ceramic creaked. "I didn't," he said quietly. "Not yet." That tiny pause between words told me everything. He wanted to do the right thing, but he was measuring it against his life. I didn't push. Instead, I gave him something steadier to hold on to. "If that footage disappears, the insurance company will assume collusion," I said. "That means every board member, including you, goes down with her. But if you preserve it, you're the whistleblower. The system protects you, not punishes you." He blinked, considering that, then let out a shaky laugh that sounded more like relief than humor. "You really think there's protection for guys like me?" "There is when the right person builds the case," I said, "and I'm very good at building cases." His eyes lifted to mine. For the first time, there wasn't fear, just conflict dissolving into resolve. "If I give you that footage," he said, voice steady now, "you didn't get it from me." "Understood." He turned to the cabinet, opened it, and slid out a thumb drive wrapped in a shop towel. His hands trembled, but his jaw was tight with decision. "This is a copy. I'll pretend it got overwritten next week. She won't know until it's too late." When I took it, he didn't look at me. He stared at the door instead, shoulders rigid, like he was listening for the sound of his own career collapsing. "You know she's going to come for me, right?" he said. "She already has," I replied. "Now she's just waiting to find out how bad she loses." Owen nodded once, exhaled slow, and straightened up. For a man torn in half by fear and decency, he suddenly looked lighter. Maybe that's what conscience feels like when it finally wins. I left the shed with the thumb drive in my pocket and the sound of his nervous laughter echoing behind me. Silver Ridge wasn't silent anymore. It was starting to whisper the truth. The thumb drive burned in my pocket the whole walk home. Every neighbor I passed gave a tight, uncertain smile. The kind people wear when they know something's wrong but don't want to choose a side. Silver Ridge had turned into a polite battlefield. The houses looked the same, but the silence between them was louder than any siren. Lydia was still asleep upstairs when I reached the kitchen. I slipped the drive into a sealed evidence bag, labeled it with the date and time, and placed it in my lockbox beside my old Navy ID. I didn't need to see the footage yet. Just knowing it existed meant Carla's control was cracking. By noon, a new email from the HOA pinged across every inbox in the neighborhood. Notice of rule violations and disciplinary review. The sender line read, "Carla Benwick, HOA President." I opened it and felt my jaw clench. She'd fined us $1,000 for conduct unbecoming of a community member and creating disorderly conditions. Apparently, the police presence at the cleanup event disturbed the peace. Lydia's name was listed as a co-violator, accused of instigating confrontation with board leadership. It was psychological warfare dressed in policy language. I printed it out, highlighted every place she used the HOA's legal insignia, and added it to the growing stack of evidence. Every official word she wrote under the board's banner pulled the association deeper into her liability pit. If she wanted to weaponize procedure, I'd make sure the shrapnel hit her wallet. By early afternoon, I drove to the HOA office, a tan, sterile building across from the tennis courts that always smelled like disinfectant and cheap coffee. Carla's car was parked out front, her vanity plate gleaming. CRBNWNR, carbon winner. Fitting for someone who thought rules made her untouchable. Inside, the air conditioning blasted too cold. A frame motto hung behind the front desk. Harmony through compliance. I almost laughed. Carla sat behind the glass conference wall, gesturing wildly at two other board members. When she saw me, her smile was instantaneous and poisonous. "Mr. Marrow," she said, pushing open the door like we were old friends. "You can't just walk in here during a closed board session." "I'm not here for the session," I said. "I'm here to deliver notice." I placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of her citation letters, the ER report, and a printed frame still from the camera footage. Carla mid-swing, Lydia's face half-turned in shock. Her expression froze when she saw it. "This isn't admissible," she snapped. "That camera isn't official HOA equipment." "True," I said, keeping my tone even, "but you were wearing your HOA badge when you assaulted my wife. You filed your own fines afterward under your official title. You used the association email to send out that memo yesterday. So, whether or not you think it's admissible doesn't matter. The insurance adjuster will decide that." The color drained from her face for half a heartbeat before she forced a smile. "You're bluffing," I shrugged. "That's what everyone said the first time I wrote an after-action report, usually right before they got audited." Her nails tapped against the table, 3 sharp clicks, a nervous tell. "You're making this worse for yourself," she hissed. "You don't understand how HOA governance works. We control the fines, the maintenance, the architectural approvals, everything. You control nothing," I said quietly. "You manage it, and you just turn management into assault liability. Congratulations." One of the board members, a gray-haired man named Rogers, looked between us like he just realized he was sitting in a live grenade zone. Carla shot him a glare, dismissing him from the room. The door shut. She leaned forward. "You think you can scare me with paperwork? I've been doing this for 12 years. Nobody wins against the board." I met her stare. "Then you haven't met a man who builds systems that hunt people like you for a living." Her smirk faltered, and that was all I needed. I gathered my papers, left the room, and didn't look back. Outside, the humidity hit like a wall. I walked toward my car, checked the dash cam, and made sure the recording was saved. Every word of that conversation was evidence. She'd confirmed acting under official capacity. That meant the insurance carrier couldn't separate her personal actions from the HOA's governance. When I got home, Lydia was awake, sitting by the window with an ice pack on her cheek. "Did you go see her?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. And she just handed me her confession on record. Lydia smiled faintly, tired but certain. "Then it's starting, isn't it?" I looked out toward the lake where the flag rippled in the soft wind. "It already has," I said. "Now it's just math and patience, and both are things she can't manipulate." That night, I uploaded everything, emails, citations, recordings, to a secured folder labeled SR Case or HOA Liability. The plan wasn't revenge. It was economic pressure, and pressure only breaks those who pretend they're unbreakable. The next morning, the sky over Silver Ridge was washed in pale gray, the kind of light that makes every surface look sterile. Lydia was resting, her cheek still bruised but fading. I kissed her forehead and drove toward Fort Pierce, not for work, but to meet someone who could help me draw blood the legal way. My old Navy contact, Commander Ed Trask, had retired a year before me and now ran a consultancy that trained corporations on risk mitigation and liability exposure. If anyone could tell me how to sink an HOA financially without breaking the law, it was him. His office sat above a marine supply store that smelled like salt and rope. Ed still looked like he hadn't forgiven retirement. Short haircut, straight spine, eyes that missed nothing. "Marrow," he said, gripping my hand hard. "Heard you got into a little neighborhood warfare?" "Not little," I replied. "She assaulted my wife, and now she's hiding behind the HOA." He motioned for me to sit. "Typical. People like that think bylaws are body armor. You have footage?" "Multiple angles, and she used her title in every public statement since." That got him smiling. "Then she's in deep. You're not just going after her personally, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm going after the structure that enabled her." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "All right, here's how this works. If she was acting as president when she assaulted your wife, meaning she invoked HOA authority, used HOA branding, or carried out enforcement, you can attach the HOA's general liability coverage to the act. Insurance companies hate that. They'll bury her to limit exposure." I nodded. "So all I have to do is prove the connection between her role and her violence." "Exactly. The email, the badge, the fines, every official action ties the chain tighter. When you file the claim, they'll open an internal review. If they find misconduct, coverage gets frozen until resolution. No coverage, no operations. HOAs paralyzed." It was the kind of strategy that didn't need noise. It needed precision. "And what happens to the president?" I asked. Ed smirked. "She becomes the liability. The board will throw her to the wolves before they lose their policy. Seen it 100 times. I left his office with my head clear and a folder of reference cases under my arm. Driving back, I realized how poetic it was. She'd built her power on fear, and now fear would be the wedge that broke her foundation. When I returned home, the neighborhood felt different again. A few residents waved cautiously, testing the air. News of Carla's outburst had leaked despite her email spin. People whispered on sidewalks and looked away. When she passed, power bleeds fast when people stop believing in it. That evening, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and drafted the formal complaint. 2. Ridgeview Mutual Liability Group. I wrote in measured clinical sentences, incident details, witness names, citation references, dates, and attached copies of every document with her signature. I included a frame from the footage showing her HOA badge visible as she struck Lydia. Halfway through, I paused. Lydia was sitting across from me, flipping through medical receipts. "You sure this will work?" she asked. "It won't just work," I said. "It'll make her own system turn on her. Insurance carriers don't care about pride, only exposure." She gave a tired smile. "That sounds like you." Before midnight, I hit send. The email left my outbox and joined a queue somewhere in a corporate server, a spark waiting for oxygen. The next morning, I got confirmation. Claim received, case ID for RM 2487. Within the hour, the HOA office phone started ringing. Carla must have gotten her copy. I pictured her expression when she read the subject line, Liability Review, Silver Ridge. Estates Homeowners Association, pending investigation. By afternoon, she'd posted another announcement on the HOA website accusing certain residents of filing frivolous claims to destabilize community management. The language reeked of panic. You could always tell when control started slipping. The sentences got longer, the threats softer. I printed that announcement too, highlighted her signature again, and slid it into my folder. Every move she made in defense was another rope around her neck. That night, as Lydia slept, I stepped outside to the flagstone pier. The lake was still, black as ink. The flag above me shifted gently in the warm air. The pier creaked under my boots, the same sound it made the day I installed it. It wasn't just wood and bolts. It was proof that peace didn't mean surrender. Carla had used the HOA to humiliate people into obedience. I was about to use it to dismantle her from the inside. And the best part? Every blow would look like paperwork. The morning sun hit the lake like shards of glass when I opened the blinds. A flock of white egrets skimmed over the water, calm and oblivious, while my phone buzzed with messages from neighbors. Word was spreading, slowly at first, then like a current pulling through the whole community. The insurance audit had begun. Ridgeview Mutual had officially assigned a field investigator to review alleged misconduct by an elected HOA officer. They copied the entire board. Carla's name was right there, printed in bold. By 8, Silver Ridge Estates was restless. You could hear it in the way garage doors stayed half open, in how people lingered outside, longer than usual, pretending to check mail. Lydia sat at the kitchen table with coffee, scrolling through the neighborhood forum. "She's losing them," she said, passing me her phone. Dozens of comments flooded a new thread titled, "Is our HOA being investigated?" Some residents defended her. Others demanded answers. The fragile trust she'd built through fear was starting to splinter. At 10, I walked to the gazebo near the lake where the community's informal meetings happened. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors in workout clothes, retirees, parents pushing strollers. They looked uneasy but curious. Carla was already there, red-faced and flanked by 2 board members like bodyguards. She spotted me halfway down the path, her smile sharp and brittle. "Mr. Marrow," she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Care to explain why you're spreading false information about this community's leadership?" I kept my pace steady. False information? That's interesting. Ridgeview Mutual must have mailed their investigation notice by accident then. A ripple moved through the crowd. One of the older homeowners, a man named Dwyer, frowned. "Wait, there's an investigation? Officially?" Carla's jaw tightened. "This man filed a baseless claim. It'll be dismissed. He's trying to sabotage the neighborhood's reputation." I stopped beside the gazebo railing. "You're worried about reputation? You hit my wife in public, on camera, while wearing your HOA badge. The insurance company doesn't care about your reputation. They care about exposure." That word landed like a hammer. Even the birds went quiet for a moment. Carla opened her mouth to counter, but I turned away first, denying her the last word. People began whispering as she stormed off. Power doesn't leave quietly. It cracks, splinters, and bleeds out through humiliation. Back home, I called Officer Velasquez to update her on the new development. "Insurance audit," she repeated, impressed. "That's a smart angle. If they find liability, the HOA's on the hook for her actions." "That's the goal," I said. "Make her own system implode from the inside." By noon, Owen texted me from an unknown number. "They're panicking. She's screaming at Rogers in the office. Told him to fix the coverage issue or she'll shut down maintenance. Be careful. She's desperate." Desperation was good. It meant she was running out of control levers. I decided to tighten the pressure. At 2, I met with 2 neighbors, Melissa and Tom, at the small coffee shop outside the subdivision. They'd both witnessed the assault and had copies of the HOA emails too. "We just want this to stop," Melissa said. "She's been terrorizing people for years." "It will," I told her, "but we need your statements for the insurer. They won't act without multiple residents confirming misconduct under board authority." Tom nodded immediately. "I'll sign whatever you need." By the time I left the cafe, I had 3 affidavits and a digital copy of the forum thread where Carla accused residents of spreading misinformation. That post alone was another nail in the coffin. Public communication under official title during an active investigation. Every line she typed tied her further to corporate negligence. When I got home, Lydia was standing on the back porch, eyes on the lake. "They're starting to talk to me," she said softly. Neighbors I've never met before. They're sorry. They're scared too. That's how fear breaks, I said. One person at a time. She looked at me. And when she realizes she's really losing, she'll lash out, I said. But panic makes mistakes, and mistakes make evidence. That night, I worked in my office while the crickets hummed outside. I compiled everything into one folder: video stills, police report, HOA memos, signed statements, Carla's posts. Each file was time-stamped, watermarked, and duplicated to cloud storage. I knew Ridgeview's investigators would call soon, and when they did, I'd be ready. Before bed, I stepped out to the porch again. Across the lake, lights flickered in Carla's windows. She was awake, probably pacing, probably planning her next move. I almost pitied her. Almost. She'd built her throne on intimidation, and now every neighbor was watching her fall. The first real wind of change rolled across the water, rippling the flag on the pier. For the first time since this began, I felt the neighborhood breathe. The system she'd built to silence people was turning against her, and this time, the rules were on my side. The call came just after midnight. The screen flashed a number I didn't recognize, but instinct told me to answer. "It's Owen," the voice whispered. "She knows about the drive." I sat up immediately. Outside, the lake was still, moonlight cutting across the flag like a blade. "Slow down," I said. "What happened?" She checked the cabinet this afternoon. I told her I'd done the deletion like she asked, but she's suspicious. She's been calling the IT vendor, trying to see if backups exist. His breathing was ragged. "Ethan, she's coming apart. She told Roger she'd sue the whole board if anyone turns on her." I swung my legs out of bed, grabbed the notepad from the desk, and wrote as he talked. Every sentence mattered. "Owen, listen to me. You did the right thing by calling. You still have the master files?" I made 2 copies, he admitted. One's hidden in my toolbox at work. The other, he hesitated, voice dropping. "It's in my house. My wife doesn't even know." Good. That meant redundancy. Carla couldn't bury everything. "Tomorrow we meet," I said. "No HOA office, no phones, somewhere neutral." He didn't argue. "The marina," he said after a pause. "South Dock, 8 a.m. There's no cameras there." When I hung up, I stared out at the pier again. Lydia stirred but didn't wake. She didn't need to see this part, the quiet hours. Where strategy turned into survival, morning came heavy and humid. The marina sat at the edge of town, a place fishermen used at dawn. I parked by the old bait shop and spotted Owen standing near the railing, his uniform shirt damp with sweat. He looked worse than before, dark circles, eyes darting like prey. When I approached, he didn't greet me. He just reached into his jacket and handed over a thumb drive sealed in a sandwich bag. "This is the complete archive," he said. "All camera angles, all timestamps, even the meetings she thought were off record." "You're sure this is everything?" He nodded, but his jaw was tight. "I didn't want to do this, Ethan. You think I enjoy betraying someone I work for? But she's lost it. After you filed the claim, she started talking about retaliation committees. She's writing letters to residents, accusing them of being traitors." He rubbed the back of his neck, fingers trembling. "She told me yesterday she'd make an example of you and your wife. Those were her words." The phrase hit like ice water. "She's threatening residents now?" "Yeah, but she's not dumb. She keeps it verbal, never on paper." I slipped the drive into my inner pocket. "Then you just gave me the paper." Owen's eyes flicked to the lake. "I'm scared, man. She knows I didn't delete the footage. If this blows up, she'll drag me down too." "She can't," I said. "Once Ridgeview reviews this, she becomes the liability, not you. You'll be the cooperating witness." He shook his head, pacing. "You sound confident. I wish I was. You don't see the messages she sends to staff. She talks like she owns the neighborhood, like the law bends for her." He stopped and looked at me then, voice cracking. "I used to believe her. That was the confession, the truth behind every small tyranny. People believe the lie until someone shows them it bleeds." "Belief's a dangerous thing in the wrong hands," I said quietly. "But that's over now." He stared at me, searching for something. Maybe permission to stop being afraid. Then his shoulders eased, and he let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "I forwarded the footage to myself, off the HOA server," he said. "Used a private email she doesn't know about. I can prove she ordered the deletions. There's even a voice memo from last week, her saying, "If the footage surfaces, I'll bankrupt them through litigation." I recorded it. He pulled out his phone, thumb shaking, and played a snippet. Her voice came through clear, venomous, and smug. That single clip was the kill shot. I looked at him. "Owen, you just saved this community." He blinked, then smiled faintly for the first time. "Then, maybe I can sleep again." "Stay quiet until you hear from me," I said. "The moment Ridgeview confirms the audit suspension, I'll make sure they know your name's attached to the cooperation. Report." As I walked back to my car, the sky broke open with heat lightning across the horizon. The air smelled like rain and change. In my pocket, the thumb drive felt heavy, but not burdensome, just final. Carla had built her empire on silence, and now the man she'd bullied into obedience had become her undoing. By dawn, the air was heavy with rain and the kind of tension that hums before a storm. I barely slept. Owen's recordings looped in my head, Carla's voice, calm and venomous, talking about bankrupting residents like it was sport. It wasn't just corruption anymore. It was premeditated control. I spent the morning at my office, turning his confession into strategy. This wasn't about emotion. It was about sequence, proof, and precision. I laid everything out on the desk: thumb drives, transcripts, the official HOA memos, and the insurance claim reference. The case was strong, but it needed one final structure before it could crush her. A verified submission chain showing the footage originated from the HOA's own system. Otherwise, Ridgeview could dismiss it as manipulated evidence. I called in a favor. Ed Trask picked up on the second ring. "You sound like you've been awake for days," he said. "Close enough," I replied. "I've got full audio, visual, timestamps, and a witness confirming she ordered deletions. I need to authenticate the metadata chain before I send it to Ridgeview's audit division." He grunted approval. "You're building an airtight case. Email me the file logs. I'll run digital integrity verification through my firm's legal tech system. They'll certify it's unaltered. That makes it admissible under federal data retention law." That's what I needed, a legal sword instead of a stick. I uploaded everything to his encrypted drop and leaned back in the chair. Outside, thunder rolled over the lake. Carla had tried to rule this neighborhood through paperwork and whispers. Now the paper trail itself was turning into the weapon that would end her. By afternoon, Ed called back. "All clean," he said. "Timestamps align, no corruption, no edits. Whoever your source is, they did this right. Ridgeview's going to tear that board apart." I thanked him and hung up. A strange calm settled in. It wasn't victory yet, but it was the sound of gears shifting in my favor. At 3, I drove to the attorney's downtown office, an old converted warehouse with glass walls and too much air conditioning. My lawyer, Bennett, was waiting with a laptop and a cup of burnt coffee. "We've got their attention," he said without preamble. "Ridgeview's legal division wants to see everything by tomorrow. They're calling it a priority-level review. That means they've already smelled blood." I handed him the verified drive. "Then this should feed their appetite." He smiled thinly. "You understand what happens when they verify misconduct? They freeze the entire HOA policy. No, liability insurance means no budget for maintenance, payroll, or legal defense. The board will turn on her fast." "That's the plan," I said. Bennett raised an eyebrow. "You're not angry." "I don't need to be," I said. "Anger's for people who don't have a plan." We went through the submission checklist line by line: police report, medical file, video clips, HOA correspondence, resident statements. Everything matched the criteria for a class-level insurance breach. I signed the affidavit, and Bennett transmitted the full report to Ridgeview's corporate server. Once the confirmation pinged, there was no turning back. Carla's empire had officially entered the audit machine. Back in the parking lot, the first drops of rain started to fall, slow and deliberate. I sat in the car for a long time, listening to it hit the windshield. Across the lot, a city maintenance truck idled, wipers slicing back and forth. It reminded me of the Navy transport planes waiting in the dark, calm before action, engines hot, mission set. When I finally drove home, the rain had turned into a steady downpour. The whole neighborhood shimmered under the streetlights, each puddle reflecting fractured images of houses too perfect to be real. Lydia stood at the window when I came in, her face lit by the glow of her phone. "It's spreading," she said softly. "The news about the investigation? Someone posted a screenshot of Ridgeview's confirmation email on the forum." "How bad is it?" "Bad for her," she said. "Good for everyone else." I looked past her to the lake. Lightning flashed, illuminating the pier for an instant. The flag whipping sideways, the woods slick with rain. "Tomorrow," I said quietly, "the system will do what it's built for." Lydia reached for my hand, squeezing once. "And after that?" "After that," I said, "we stop living under someone else's fear." I turned off the lights, but I didn't go to bed. Instead, I sat in the dark, watching the storm. It wasn't chaos, it was cleansing. The insurance auditors would descend by morning, and Carla Benwick, for the first time in her life, would face a rule she couldn't rewrite. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving the streets slick and shining, like the neighborhood was trying to wash itself clean. I hadn't slept. My inbox was filling faster than I could read. Messages from residents, lawyers, and finally, Ridgeview Mutual. The subject line hit like a gunshot. Field audit notification, Silver Ridge Estates. They were sending an investigator that afternoon to conduct on-site interviews and review potential breach of fiduciary duty by board officials. The moment I read those words, I knew Carla's empire was about to implode. By mid-morning, the HOA parking lot was a gallery of nervous cars. The investigator, a tall woman in a gray suit named Ms. Danner, arrived right on time. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Clipboard, credentials, and a face that gave nothing away. I watched from across the street as she entered the office, flanked by two assistants carrying case folders. Lydia joined me on the porch, her coffee untouched. "She looks like someone Carla can't charm," she murmured. "She isn't here to be charmed," I said. "She's here to count casualties." Through the glass wall of the HOA office, we could see Carla pacing behind her desk, gesturing wildly. Rogers, the treasurer, sat pale and silent beside her. The gray-suited investigator spoke only occasionally, pointing at documents and motioning toward the wall camera feeds. Every few minutes, Carla's expression changed, from arrogance to frustration to something close to panic. It was working. Around noon, I received a call from Ms. Danner herself. "Mr. Marrow," she said, her tone clipped but respectful. "We're conducting a full internal review. I've reviewed your submitted evidence, and I'd like to verify the original source of the footage you referenced in your claim. I can provide that in person," I said. "Good. Board meeting room, 30 minutes. When I arrived, the tension was thick enough to touch. Carla sat at the far end of the table, shoulders stiff, a fake smile glued to her face. "Mr. Marrow," she said, voice syrupy, "how thoughtful of you to come assist with this misunderstanding." Ms. Danner ignored her and gestured for me to sit. "You're the complainant, correct?" "Yes. And the witness who preserved the HOA system footage has verified chain of custody records." I handed her the drive Owen had given me, the verified one, not the decoy. "It contains the unedited footage and an audio file of Ms. Benwick instructing staff to delete the originals." Carla shot up from her chair. "That's private property. You can't use stolen." Danner cut her off. "Ms. Benwick, please sit down. You're recorded, and obstruction will be noted." For a second, Carla froze. Then she dropped back into her chair, glaring daggers at me. The room was silent except for the soft clicking of the investigator's pen as she filled out the chain of evidence form. When she finished, she stood. "Per Ridgeview protocol, I'm issuing an immediate provisional suspension of Silver Ridge's liability coverage pending final determination. You'll receive written confirmation within 48 hours. Carla's face drained of color. "You can't do that." "I just did," Danner said. "You've tied the association to personal acts of aggression committed in office. Ridgeview won't risk underwriting that exposure." It was quiet after that. You could hear the air conditioner hum. Rogers sank deeper in his chair, muttering something about bankruptcy filings. Carla just stared at me, her composure unraveling thread by thread. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You'll destroy this whole neighborhood. Without insurance, everything falls apart." I met her glare. Maybe it's time something did. Danner ended the meeting and left with her team, evidence bag in hand. Outside, word spread like wildfire. Neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering, scrolling through the forum, updates that now carried screenshots of the notice Ridgeview had already posted online. Coverage suspended pending investigation. By late afternoon, Carla's control was gone. The HOA website went dark. The maintenance hotline shut down. Contractors refused to show up without confirmed liability coverage. The empire she built on fear collapsed under the weight of its own paperwork. That evening, I found Owen standing near the playground, his face drawn but relieved. "She's finished," he said quietly. "Rogers called me after the meeting. They're already drafting her resignation letter before the board dissolves." "She'll sign it," I said. "She won't have a choice." He nodded, then gave a shaky laugh. "You really did it. You fought her without throwing a punch." "That's the thing about control," I said, watching the sunset bleed orange across the lake. "It only works until someone reads the fine print." Lydia joined us, slipping her hand into mine. The flag above the pier flapped in the fading light, and for the first time, Silver Ridge didn't feel like enemy territory. It felt free. The next morning, Silver Ridge felt different. The stillness wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. Cars idled longer at intersections. Sprinklers hissed on empty lawns, and every porch light seemed to flicker like a watchful eye. Carla Benwick's grip had slipped overnight, but she wasn't gone yet. A suspended insurance policy doesn't erase power, it starves it. And a starving tyrant is dangerous. I sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee, scanning my phone. The HOA website was still offline, but the community forum was on fire. Dozens of posts dissected Ridgeview's announcement, some demanding accountability, others panicking about repairs and fines. One resident wrote, "If Carla goes down, we all go down with her." Fear had become her last currency, and she was spending it fast. At 9, my phone buzzed with a call from Rogers, the treasurer. His voice was thin, almost brittle. "Ethan, she's calling an emergency meeting tonight. She says it's to restore confidence before the full board vote tomorrow." I let the words hang. "She's not giving up?" "She's cornered," he said. "She wants to convince the board she can get Ridgeview to reinstate coverage. But the rest of us, we've seen the paperwork. It's over." "Then she's bluffing," I said. "And this meeting is her last show of control." Rogers exhaled audibly. "She's invited residents too. It's going to be ugly." "Good," I said. "Let her talk." By sunset, the clubhouse parking lot overflowed with cars. People packed the walkway, umbrellas dripping from the afternoon rain. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered above folding chairs arranged in uneven rows. The air buzzed with the low murmur of whispered rumors. Lydia sat beside me in the back, her hand resting over mine. Carla entered 10 minutes late, wearing a tailored navy jacket and the same badge she'd worn when she hit my wife. Her hair was perfect, but her face carried the tightness of sleepless nights. She walked to the front with a clipboard like a weapon and tapped the microphone. "Thank you for coming," she began. "There's been a lot of misinformation spreading in this community. Rumors about our insurance, about me, and about certain residents' actions. Tonight, I intend to clear that up." A few people clapped. Most stayed silent. "I've spoken with Ridgeview," she continued. "The suspension is temporary. They just need verification that no criminal misconduct occurred. Once I clarify the misunderstanding, coverage will be restored. But if outsiders keep interfering, we could lose everything." Her gaze swept the room and landed on me. "I think we all know who those outsiders are." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Lydia's fingers tightened around mine, but I didn't move. She needed to finish her performance before I ended it. When she paused for effect, I stood. The microphone squealed as I walked down the aisle toward the front. "You're right, Carla," I said. "We should clear this up tonight." Her jaw stiffened. "You don't have the floor, Mr. Marrow." "I don't need it," I replied. "Ridgeview already does." I handed a printed letter to Rogers. It was Ridgeview's latest correspondence, delivered that afternoon, an official termination notice effective immediately. The bold header read, "Policy canceled for cause, gross negligence and intentional misrepresentation." Rogers' mouth fell open. He passed it to the vice president, who passed it down the table. Gasps filled the room. Carla's face went pale. This isn't real. You forged..." I cut her off. "It's verified by Ridgeview's legal division. They're referring your actions to the State Insurance Commission. The HOA's coverage is gone because of you. Every homeowner here just lost financial protection for property damage, theft, and liability, because you couldn't control your temper or your ego." Someone in the crowd shouted, "Is that true?" Another voice, "She lied to us!" The room erupted, questions, accusations, the sound of betrayal cracking wide open. Carla backed up a step, clutching the microphone like it could shield her. "I tried to protect this neighborhood," she screamed over the noise. "Everything I did was for order." "Order?" I said, voice calm. "You hit my wife in the name of order. You fined veterans, harassed widows, and silenced anyone who questioned you. That's not order. That's tyranny in a name." Tag. Security from the clubhouse staff moved closer, but the board didn't stop me. They were done protecting her. Rogers stood, his voice shaking as he read aloud the final paragraph from Ridgeview's letter. "Until new leadership is established, Silver Ridge Estates remains uninsured and under legal review." The silence that followed was different. Final. Carla's clipboard slipped from her hands, clattering onto the floor. For the first time, she looked small. The board members rose one by one, walked past her, and left their seats empty. I turned back toward the crowd. "Tomorrow morning, we'll meet at the pier," I said. "Everyone's welcome. It's time we start over, without fear." Lydia joined me as we walked out into the humid night. Behind us, the clubhouse buzzed with the first real sound of freedom, voices rising not in fear, but in relief. The storm wasn't over yet, but it was breaking exactly where it needed to. The morning heat came early, pressing down on Silver Ridge like a weight. I stood at the flagstone pier just after sunrise, the woods still damp from night dew. By 8 o'clock, the crowd began to gather, families, retirees, young couples pushing strollers. Word had spread from last night's meeting faster than wildfire. No one wore HOA badges today. They came as neighbors, not subordinates. Lydia stood beside me, her cheek faintly bruised but healing. For the first time in weeks, her eyes looked calm. Across the lake, the clubhouse doors slammed. Carla Benwick emerged, flanked by 2 board members who hadn't yet resigned, Rogers and the vice president, nervous and tight-lipped. Carla carried a stack of papers under her arm like armor. Her heels clicked hard against the asphalt as she approached the pier, face flushed from fury and fear. "Everyone, please!" she shouted, raising a hand. "We need to restore order. These accusations have gone too far. The cancellation letter was falsified. Our coverage is under appeal. Nothing is final." Her voice carried over the water, brittle and desperate. From the crowd, someone called back, "Then why did Ridgeview post it on their website?" Another voice followed, angrier. "You lied to us, Carla." Carla's face twitched. She tried to smile. "I didn't lie. I acted under legal counsel. The situation is complex. None of you understand how fragile our finances are." That's when I stepped forward. "You're right," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Most of them didn't understand, but now they do. She spun toward me, eyes blazing. "You don't speak for this community." I moved closer until only a few feet separated us. "Neither do you. Not anymore." I turned to the crowd. "Every policy Ridgeview issued to Silver Ridge Estates is void. The company confirmed it publicly. That means every property here is uninsured. And do you know why?" The crowd murmured, uneasy. "Because their investigation found gross negligence by the board president," I said, pointing at her. "She used HOA authority to commit personal assaults, falsify correspondence, and intimidate residents. Ridgeview called it exactly what it is: intentional misrepresentation. The moment she struck my wife while wearing that badge, she didn't just hurt one family, she destroyed the legal shield protecting every home in this neighborhood." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A man near the front shouted, "Is that true, Carla? Did you hit her while acting as president?" Carla's lips trembled. "I was defending—" "You were abusing," I cut in, "and it's over." I pulled a folded paper from my jacket and held it high. "This is the acknowledgement from Ridgeview's general counsel. It states that the association can restore coverage only after electing a new board and submitting an independent audit." People began taking photos, recording videos, sharing them in real time. Carla's mouth opened, but no words came. She looked like a drowning woman, realizing the tide had turned. Rogers stepped forward, his voice unsteady but firm. "Carla, the members deserve a vote, right now." Her head snapped toward him. "You can't—" He didn't let her finish. "We can. Bylaw Section 12C, special removal of an officer by community majority during financial crisis. You wrote that clause yourself." The crowd erupted in applause, some cheering, others chanting her name like a sentence. "Out! Out! Out!" The sound rolled across the lake. Carla's expression fractured into disbelief, then rage. She tried to shout over them, but the noise drowned her out completely. Rogers raised his hand. All in favor of removing Carla Benwick from the presidency of Silver Ridge Estates, effective immediately? Nearly every hand went up. Phones flashed like strobe lights as people filmed the moment. Even the vice president raised her hand, jaw trembling. Rogers nodded. Motion carried. The silence that followed was deafening. Carla dropped her papers, the wind scattering them across the pier. For a long moment, she just stood there, beaten not by violence, but by consequence. When she finally turned away, no one followed her. The queen of compliance walked off alone, her heels sinking into the damp ground. I looked out at the lake, the crowd's energy shifting from anger to relief. Lydia stepped forward, her voice steady but soft. "Let's rebuild what she broke," she said, "together." The applause that followed wasn't loud or wild. It was grounded, genuine. For the first time, Silver Ridge sounded like a community again. As the sun broke through the clouds, I felt the tension finally release. Carla Benwick's reign had ended not with sirens or shouting, but with a vote, public, recorded, irreversible. And that was justice the system could never deny. The sun was high by the time the crowd dispersed. The chants had faded, replaced by the quiet murmur of neighbors finally talking to one another like equals. The air felt lighter, the tension gone, though the storm's memory lingered in the puddles that mirrored the flag above the lake. Lydia and I stayed on the flagstone pier long after everyone left. The boards creaked under us, familiar and solid, the sound of home reclaimed. Across the water, the clubhouse sat empty. Windows dark, doors locked, Carla's car gone. The woman who once controlled every letter, fine, and rulebook had vanished before the vote results were even filed. Her office would be cleared out by evening, and the HOA seal she'd paraded like a crown would soon hang in the hands of an interim committee. Justice didn't roar. It whispered in paperwork and procedure. Owen arrived mid-morning, hands in his pockets, shoulders lighter than I'd ever seen them. "It's official," he said, holding out a folded paper. "The board just signed the resignation. Rogers is stepping in as acting president until we can hold elections. Ridgeview's already reinstating coverage under provisional compliance." Lydia smiled faintly. "That was fast?" "Carla's attorney must have told her what would happen if she resisted," Owen said. "The insurer would have gone after her personally for damages. She's lucky if she keeps her house." He looked at me then, hesitating like he wanted to say something more. "Ethan, I never said thank you. You could have destroyed everyone to get to her. Instead, you made sure we all stayed standing." I shook my head. "You made the choice that mattered. You turned the lights back on." He laughed softly. "Still feels strange. We used to walk on eggshells around her. Now people are calling me asking how to volunteer. She had everyone terrified." "Fear's efficient," I said, "but it never lasts." He nodded, gave a small salute, and walked back toward the clubhouse. Watching him go, I realized how transformation often begins, with one person deciding not to be afraid anymore. By afternoon, the new board posted an announcement to every mailbox. Effective immediately, the HOA will undergo independent financial review and open community elections. Residents are invited to submit proposals for neighborhood improvement. The seal at the bottom no longer bore Carla's signature. Beneath it, in simple block letters, was Owen's name. Lydia read it out loud, her voice soft but certain. "It's over." "Not over," I said, looking toward the pier. "Just different." We walked there together, the same steps we'd taken countless times before, but this time, every board, every nail, carried meaning. I set the small brass plaque into place at the base of the flagpole. The words glinted in the afternoon light, "For those who fought to bring peace home." Lydia traced the letters with her fingers, eyes glassy. "That's for him, isn't it?" she asked. I nodded. "For him, for us, for anyone who ever got pushed around and didn't stay down." The lake reflected the sky so clearly, it looked like you could fall into it and keep falling forever. I remembered the night Carla had hit Lydia, the sound of impact, the smell of mulch and shock, and how close I'd come to breaking the promise I made the day I retired. Never fight unless there's no other way. Turns out, there was another way. It just required patience sharper than violence. Owen's voice carried from across the street as he talked with residents by the playground, his hands moving as he explained new plans, community cleanups, lake restoration, neighborhood watch. For the first time, people were smiling when they mentioned the HOA. They weren't afraid of fines or threats. They were rebuilding, one decision at a time. Lydia leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you think she'll come back?" "Carla?" I said. "She'll try. People like her always do. But next time, no one's going to let her through the door." We stood there until the sun began to sink, the sky turning copper and blue. Kids laughed near the water's edge, chasing dragonflies through the reeds. The neighborhood that had once felt like a cage now sounded alive. I took a breath, feeling the air shift. "You know," I said, "this place finally feels like home again." Lydia smiled, brushing a loose hair from her face. "It's because you stopped letting fear run it." Maybe she was right. Maybe the fight wasn't just against Carla. It was against the idea that silence keeps you safe. It doesn't. Silence keeps you owned. As the light faded, I turned toward the camera on my phone and hit record. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. The flag fluttered behind me. The lake caught the last streak of gold, and for the first time in a long time, peace didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned.